This is a, hold on, let me get this. This is a tanka, a Tibetan tanka of Avalokiteśvara in Chenrezig is what she is in Tibetan practice. And this one is in the peaceful aspect, one face and four hands. The middle two hands are holding the wish-granting jewel. And then she also has a mala and a lotus, which is often represents wisdom aspect, and also seated on a lotus. And in the bodhisattva aspect of being translucent, made of light, magically manifesting. Riding on a lake and coming out on a lotus, on a sun moon disk, she is. So anyway, Chenrezig is in Tibetan, and she's called Kuan Yin in Chinese tradition. And here I have here she is in, I think this, I'm not sure, it's hard for me to tell sometimes Chinese and Japanese iconography with these. But here she's holding she has one hand in the fearlessness mudra, and the other is in the holding the vase, pouring the water of compassion, water of grace, healing, fearlessness. Sometimes she's held holding a willow branch for healing. So Kuan Yin in standing pose. And then of course in Japanese we call her Kanzeon or Kanzeon or Kanjizai. And in Quang in Vietnam. So she's very much she, he, they, very much beloved throughout East Asia Buddhism. And, for us, the archetype that comes to mind for me is Mother Mary, exemplifying compassion. And really expressing gentleness, responsiveness, empathy, all the qualities, the helpful qualities of compassion. And they take on so many forms, so many different forms in what we call skillful means of providing what people will need to further their awakening. And, so even sometimes there's a Avalokiteśvara who's a horsehead and very wrathful and terrifying if that's what is needed to wake someone up or to help them in some way. One of the and you also see they as active, like not in the cross-legged position always, but maybe with one foot up or one foot down, getting ready, like Avalokiteśvara is always ready to be there to help, like instantaneously ready to stand up to help. And the story of the Avalokiteśvara as the 1,000 arms with an eye in the palm of every hand and 11 heads going up. And the story for that is that Avalokiteśvara made the vow to save all sentient beings, and so they went to the hell realms to empty the hell realms, and in using his spiritual powers, we're managing to save all of the people in the hell realms and bringing them all out of the hell realms. And as soon as that happened, the hell realms immediately filled up again. And then Avalokiteśvara went again, and through skillful means and spiritual power managed to empty the hell realms again. Turns around and up, they've filled again. This happens 3 times until they are so upset and frustrated and um, in despair that her head breaks open, like bursts open, and there's a face. Then 11 heads appear, a face in the front and a face on each side, so that she can see in all directions, and then one on top of the other on top of the other, so she can see every single thing. And the 1,000 arms, each with a eye in the palm, and different implements for skillful means. So holding a hook to, and a lasso and a rope and a torch and a light and everything we could think of to help people. And I think this is a great kind of analogy for what we go through on a daily basis. I mean, we read the news and we try to do what we can, and we donate to whoever we think we can afford to, and be kind to our neighbors and do all that. And yet suffering continues. And it seems like the news gets worse. And, how do we handle that? And so I feel like this, head bursting open is how we can feel sometimes. And the idea that we can hear the cries of the world, be aware of the cries of the world, try to help, and also not be affected by the outcome or lack of outcome. The fact that we'll try as hard as we can and the hells are going to refill. This is the human condition. This is what we're in. And the Buddha said in the beginning, like, this existence is suffering. And so there's that sense of operating, hearing the cries, doing all that we can, and also knowing that we might not see the positive outcome that we want to see. I was just, demonstrating, doing a climate change event, and of course, I mean, the Federal Reserve amazingly did not change their policies to divest from fossil fuels and invest in clean renewables, the day after we said to do that, asked to do that. It's and yet we go on, yet we go on. So I think that also the idea of helping however we can help. We don't have to be judgmental about, well, this is Dharma practice and this isn't. And if someone needs food, they're not going to be able to really generally think about spiritual practice. We need to help them with food first. And then you can, then someone might be able to take the next step and the next step and the next step. And the other thing I wanted to say about hell realms and this whole devotional aspect is, what does that mean? Are they geographical places, physical, real places, imagined places, mental, emotional places? I'm always reminded when I think about, kind of the iconography of Buddhism, or the six hells and all these things, and I'm reminded of a Zen story, which is that the samurai goes to the temple and asks the master, teach me about heaven and hell. This samurai, he's killed people, he's done all these things, he wants, he's concerned, and so the master looks at him and he says, "You good for nothing samurai, you fool, you probably couldn't even understand what I said, even if I told it to you. Just go away." And this made the samurai quite upset and angry. So he draws his sword and he's ready to run the master through. "I'm going to just kill you for what you just said." And the master says, "Oh, here opens the gates of hell." And the samurai got it. He said, he was taken aback, sheaths his sword, regains his calm, bows to the master and says, "I'm so sorry. I apologize." And the master says, "Here open the gates of heaven." And so I take that with kind of all of our looking at the iconography of the different aspects of the bodhisattvas. And, they're without us and they're also within us, all of it. So let's see. And on the, in our modern society and the skillful means, like the artist Mayumi Oda, who's drawn beautiful things for the Zen centers, has drawn Avalokiteśvaras with her 8 hands or 6 hands, as a cook holding a frying pan and a spatula, and other people have drawn, the bodhisattva of compassion as a homemaker with, the diapers in one hand and the cooking in the other hand and the washing in the other hand, and just, doing all of it all at once, as needed. Yeah. And this, so there's this of calling on Kanzeon. What do we, if this aspect of mercy, of compassion is inside ourselves, outside ourselves, not different from ourselves, what is devotion? I think sometimes it's difficult for Zen people to be in this, we're more like it's all mind and it's all oneness, and we don't have to, there's nothing outside of ourselves, and yet there is an aspect of when we call on that compassionate wisdom that arises within us. There's a reverberation in the universe of that energy coming to and from us, I believe. And the Tibetans would say that they maintain, that you really, spiritual practice, that you can go so far on your own power, and then there's also calling on these archetypes, calling on this wisdom. They think without doing mantras you really can't get very far, and the Pure Land, Japanese Pure Land would say the same thing. They're very devoted to Kanzeon and Kanzeon, and it's also very, like, we can take the backward step into the 1,000 arms of Kanzeon. We can kind of rest and rely upon that aspect of compassion within and without us. So Avalokiteśvara is known as the one who hears the cries of the world, but calmly hears and considers the woes. She's regarded as the regarder of the world's cries. That implies empathy and active listening are primary practices of compassion. Just to be present without needing to fix it, just to be, to listen, and active listening, and to be aware. We also know that to hear the cries of others and to help the suffering of others, we can't offer compassion to others without being compassionate, accepting, and forgiving of ourselves. So that realizing that we're not other is so crucial to being able to sit in the midst of the suffering. And Avalokiteśvara is, as I said, the one who is ready to jump up and act, who has one foot down, who's ready to move. Um, she's responsive without deliberation, simply meeting the immediate cries and needs of beings as they appear. I think is so beautiful. And we, there's a story. I mean, Chris often has talks about this koan, really loves this koan, but it's brought up here too. Um, the reaching back for the pillow in the night. This intuitive knowing, this without thought kind of being. So it's Dawu and Hunyan, and they ask what the Bodhisattva of compassion does with so many hands and eyes. And Dawu says, it's like reaching back for your pillow in the middle of the night. Hunan immediately understands and says, it's all over the body as hands and eyes. And Dawu responds, all over is very good, but only 80%. Throughout the body are hands and eyes. And so it's just this further and further interpenetration of self and other, of no self, separate self-existence. Reaching back for your pillow in the middle of the night is a marvelous image for the natural, unpremeditated, uncalculating function of Avalokiteśvara. The Book of Serenity commentary says, when reaching for a pillow in the night, there's an eye in the hand. When eating, there is an eye on the tongue. When recognizing people, on hearing them speak, there is an eye in the ears. And 1,000 hands reach out from the emptiness of absolute unity, feeling around for pillows in the world of particular beings. Reaching back at midnight, 1,000 flowing hands and eyes calmly hear all cries and share their pillow with myriad beings. I love that. Reaching back at midnight, 1,000 flowing hands and eyes calmly hear all cries and share their pillow with myriad beings. The fundamental of Buddhist doctrine of emptiness, as expounded by Manjusri, says that things are empty of inherent self-existence. Avalokiteśvara contemplates how the self exists, observes closely its workings, and realizes freedom in perceiving its emptiness of separate self-existence. We recognize our sameness, that nothing can be separate and estranged. People are the same in having needs and desires. We all want love, to be loved, and imagine that we are solitary. To truly realize the self, both the self's lack of inherent separate existence and the larger self of interconnectedness of all beings, is called liberation. Avalokiteśvara is from the Heart Sutra, which we do all the time. Avalokiteśvara, when practicing deeply the Prajnaparamita, perceived that all 5 skandhas in their own being are empty and was saved from suffering. And then Dogen says, to study the way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be awakened by all things, and the body and mind of self and other drop away. This is, I love this. This is mostly from Taigen, writings of Taigen, and sweetly Chris pointed me in this direction. So this is I think this would be this is a meditation on sound. And since Avalokiteśvara is the hearer of the cries of the world, the hearer of sound, I think it's really interesting. When I was a hospice nurse, one of my patients, as he was dying, was in his easy chair, and he'd been a physician, and he said that he was hearing the cries of the world. He was sitting in his chair in his house, and just like this kind of this sound of the world was coming to him, and yeah, I just sort of love this, and also we have all of our judgments about what we perceive. Like we want to hear some sweet sound and don't want to hear some bad sound, and we think this one's good and this one's not good. So, well, this is a meditation on sound, and maybe we can do it for a couple of minutes. Avalokiteśvara recommends concentrating on sound as an object and then turning the attention back to one's own hearing of sound. To realize the imagined split between hearer and the sound is illusory. The practice can overcome dualistic delusion not only of hearer sound and subject object, but attending to sound. Avalokiteśvara says dualistic notions of stillness and disturbance, of arising and disappearing, of limited ideas about attainment and emptiness are overcome. Other senses, such as taste and smell and thought, are intermittently available, but sound is constant. Sound can be received in all directions, and visual objects are limited. You can only see them if you're looking in the right direction, but we can hear sound through walls and outside and everywhere else. So let's just experience sound for 2 minutes, and let's experience them as sound flows constantly, like the stream of a mountain valley. Even when living in a big city, you can stop and soak up the stream of traffic sound or the nearby highway. Appreciate hearing the sound. Be refreshed by the inner and outer sound and silence. And in this, I was feeling like we could feel like we were all ears. You know, we said we were all hands and eyes, or we were the whole body was hands and eyes. We could now be, our whole body be ears. Let's be ears for a couple minutes. Nice. Yeah. So. So in this bodhisattva, well, and then a couple of other just examples are kind of examples of the archetype. The Bodhidharma was considered a emanation of Avalokiteśvara, albeit a wrathful one, kind of the tough love side. You know, there's so many stories about him sitting 9 years against the wall and tearing off his eyebrows so he wouldn't sleep, and all kinds of stuff he did. But it's inspired Dharma practitioners for 1,500 years. So he is, and then the Dalai Lama is another one, or Mother Teresa. These ones who just it's said that Avalokiteśvara doesn't understand compassion. Like, there's no thought about it. They're just like doing it. And Dalai Lama says, love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive. Very true. The roots of all goodness lie in the soil of appreciation for goodness. I would say in gratitude. The paramitas of gratitude and patience are so important in this aspect of compassion. And then the intuitive nature of helping. Like, how do we help? How do we really, what do we do? How do we do it? How do we entrust ourselves, like our own inner guidance? It's like coming back to taking the backward step. Well, here comes my granddaughter, so it's going to all change right now. Hello. Hi, how are you?
Can I watch a little bit of Tablet while you're
Yes, you may. Okay, so, all right, I'm going to, let's see. Let's see. It's hard for me to continue on with that massive interruption. So maybe at this point we should talk about what's helpful to each of us. What is how do we find our inner guidance? What's our sense of compassion, and how do we see that archetype within ourselves? So could we do some groups or yeah?